Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, pro physique athlete. Today I'm going to be sharing a full science-based 4-day program based on the PHUL setup. PHUL stands for Power Hypertrophy Upper Lower, and this reflects how the program is set up across the week. So it's set up into an upper lower split, and in the first two workouts, your workouts are focused on power training. This typically involves your big barbell movements in low rep ranges. Then in the second half of the week, you bring in more traditional hypertrophy type training, which typically involves higher rep ranges. This program is set with moderate volumes, well designed for a late beginner and onwards, and it's primarily designed with hypertrophy in mind, although it also has a strong element of strength training. And later we'll talk about how this can actually benefit you even from a hypertrophy standpoint. We'll start with a program walkthrough where I share everything you need to know to run the program yourself, including exercises, sets, and reps. After that, we'll talk about the weekly setup, or how I prefer to lay out the workouts in the week. And finally, we'll go over the pros and cons of this full program using a modified upper lower split, and you'll see some of the changes I've made to the traditional upper lower setup to make it better. Okay, let's do our program walkthrough. So this is Dr. Swole's 4-day power hypertrophy upper lower program. It's set with moderate volume, so well designed for a late beginner and onwards. We've got upper body day 1, lower body day 1, upper body 2, and lower body day 2. Here are the exercises, and there are the sets and reps. Down here we have the total number of sets for each workout, so you have an idea of workout length. And down here we have our total number of sets for each muscle group per week. We have quads, glutes and hamstrings, chest, back, side delts, biceps, triceps, and calves. And you can see that this is a moderate volume program. Starting off with upper body day 1, we kick it off with a bench press for the chest, 3 sets of 3 to 5. With the power hypertrophy upper lower full setup, we'll be putting our heavy barbell strength work on our first 2 days. Next we have pendlay rows for the back, 4 sets of 6 to 10, and these are basically a barbell row variation where you actually start with the barbell on the ground. Just make sure you reset completely and really focus on using your lats. I want you to use these like a strength movement, but really make sure you're focused on locking in your technique. Next we have dumbbell overhead press, 3 sets of 5 to 8. Then we have lat pull downs for the back, 4 sets of 8 to 12. Following that, rope press downs for the triceps, 3 sets of 6 to 10. And you can superset these on the cable machine with cable upright rows. I count these for side delts, but they also hit the traps, 3 sets of 6 to 10. Finally, we have machine lateral raises also for the side delts, 2 sets of 8 to 12. You'll often see in my upper lower programs that I place overhead press as the first exercise of the day on upper body day 2. Here I've placed it on upper body day 1, and this is just part of the full setup, and you'll see that it allows us to prioritize other movements later on in the week. Next we have lower body day 1, and we start with squat for the quads, 5 sets of 3 to 5. Then we have deadlifts, 3 sets of 3 to 5. You'll see that I program my bench press, squat, and deadlift in pretty low rep ranges in this program. This will help you build strength, but also can have an indirect benefit for hypertrophy. The idea is that when you get used to lifting heavier weights, you'll get stronger and you'll be able to perform more volume for other movements later in the week. The 3 to 5 rep range can work well with a wave loading progression scheme. So what I'd recommend trying is start with 5 reps in week 1. In week 2, move to 4 reps. In week 3, move to 3 reps, and then come back to 5 reps, but with higher weight. After deadlifts, we have leg extensions for the quads, 3 sets of 10 to 15, and then we have leg curls for the hamstrings, 3 sets of 10 to 15. Then we have a bit of upper body work, which I've moved onto lower body day 1. We have seated dumbbell curls for the biceps, 3 sets of 8 to 12. You can superset these with dumbbell lateral raises for the side delts, 2 sets of 8 to 12. Then we have rope hammer curls also for the biceps, 2 sets of 10 to 15. And finally, machine calf raises, which I've programmed in a myo-rep scheme. So these are basically rest pause sets. You do one main top set of 8 to 15 reps, then I'll count down from 10 and then do 4 sets of 3 to 5 reps using the same weight, also taking about 10 seconds in between each of these mini sets. This can be a good way to fit in a lot of effective work in a short period of time. I've estimated this as about 3 straight sets worth of volume. You'll see that this is a modified upper lower split. I've moved my bicep training onto lower body days, and I've taken some of my side delt work and shifted it from upper body day onto lower body day. These changes give you some powerful benefits, which we'll talk about later. Going on to upper body day 2, we start off with close grip bench press, which I count for triceps and chest, 4 sets of 6 to 10. In this program, we have dumbbell overhead presses coming on upper body day 1, and then we have upper body day 2 giving you the focus on close grip bench press. Your first movement of the day always gets some priority, and here I've set this up this way to give you a bit better strength carryover for the bench. Next, we have weighted chin-ups, which I count for the back, 4 sets of 6 to 10. Note that these also use your biceps to a high degree. Then we have incline dumbbell flies for the chest, 3 sets of 10 to 15. Dumbbell flies are nice because they actually place the most stress at the stretch part of the movement at the bottom. And I've set them on an incline here so you can target your upper chest. Then we have machine rows for the back, 4 sets of 10 to 15. You'll see that I typically set up my machine movements with lower weights and higher reps than our main free weight compound movements. Machine work does typically work better in higher rep ranges. Next, we have overhead cable extensions for the triceps, 3 sets of 12 to 20. Following that, cable upright rows again for the side delts, 3 sets of 10 to 15. And finally, machine lateral raises for the side delts, 3 sets of 12 to 20. Finally, we have lower body day 2, and we start off with the Romanian deadlift for the glutes and hamstrings, 3 sets of 6 to 10. After that, we have hack squats for the quads, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Then we have dumbbell walking lunges for the glutes and hamstrings, but I also count these for quads, 3 sets of 8 to 12. It's nice to have a little bit of unilateral and bilateral work in your program. Then we have leg presses for the quads, 2 sets of 10 to 15. Notice that for our leg work, I've actually put some of our easier machine exercises onto lower body day 1. This is to offset all the fatigue generated by your heavy squats and deadlifts. So this is not the most pure form of power hypertrophy upper lower, but I think it's better for overall fatigue distribution. Then we have some bicep work, lying bicep curls, 3 sets of 6 to 10. So you lie on your back for these, a more extreme version of incline curls. Then we have single arm preacher curls also for the biceps, 2 sets of 10 to 15. You can do these on a bench set at about 60 degrees, and you can superset them with dumbbell lateral raises for the side delts, 3 sets of 12 to 20. The side delts typically do well with higher rep ranges. Finally, we have some calf raises on the leg press machine. Again, we have a myo rep setup. So 1 top set of 10 to 20 reps, followed by 7 mini sets of 3 to 5 reps. Note that I listed these last, but you can actually superset these with your leg presses themselves. Okay, now that you've seen the program, let's talk about my weekly layout. This is my preferred setup. You have upper body day 1, rest, lower body day 1, rest, upper 2, lower 2, and rest. This 4-day upper lower is actually particularly well designed for the full setup. You'll notice that these first 2 upper lower body days are surrounded by rest days. This synergizes really well with how we put our heavier strength type work on these first 2 days. You'll be more rested for these 2 workouts, and you'll get more out of those movements. Whenever you have a 4-day setup, you're always going to have 2 days that come back to back in the week. So you'll want to specifically design your program so your less fatiguing work comes on those days. The other thing that comes out of having your first upper and lower body days separated by rest days means that you can place heavier pulling movements on your upper body day 1. So this would be a great place to put our heavy barbell rows. And you'll see here that we're treating our heavy barbell row variation as a main movement. In the upper lower split, when you have 2 days come back to back, I typically like having the upper body day come first. This is because a tough leg day can impact your upper body training coming the day after, but not so much the other way around. Note that the upper lower split for 4 days per week is actually very flexible in that you can shuffle workouts around. Like this upper body day could move over to this day. This lower body day could move over to this day. It wouldn't quite be ideal since you saw the specific programming considerations that I put into this program, but it would still be doable if you had to. Okay, now let's talk about the pros and cons of this full setup. First of all, starting with the pros, we have good use of DUP. DUP is daily undulating periodization, and it's a programming technique where you split up some of your lower rep and higher rep work throughout the week. And you see this here where we have a more low rep day on our power day and then higher reps on our other days. DUP can be a useful way to incorporate your lower rep training into hypertrophy based programs. The idea is that on your power days, you can really focus on that lower rep strength work. And when you do your higher rep work on those other days, you give your joints some time to recover. Training with heavy weights is nice, but it does put more stress on your connective tissue. So if you're always trying to go heavy, you do risk running into problems with your tendons and joints. Now note that there are some drawbacks with this if you go too purist with DUP, and we'll talk about this in the cons section. Next advantage, this program is very well balanced. This is what I really like about the upper lower split once you make those modifications that you saw me do. Typically, the upper lower split has the problem of having very long upper body days. This is just because you have more muscles to train in your upper body than in your lower body. But when we move our bicep and some of our side delt work onto lower body days, we even out our day lengths. This allows us to even out our priorities and weekly training volumes between the upper and lower body. Another good thing about the upper lower split in general is that it has good fatigue distribution. This is how you spread out your training stress across the week. In more extreme splits like bro splits, where you have a specific arm day and then a big leg day, you have a big difference in the amount of fatigue between those days, and you may not be able to recover as well. Next, with the modifications you saw me make to the upper lower split, we have a high frequency for bicep and side delt training. As you saw, the biceps get trained 4 times per week. They get trained directly on your leg days now, but they also get trained indirectly with your pulling movements on the upper body days. Side delts also get trained 4 times per week. The other thing that comes out of this when you move biceps onto lower body days is that you get to train biceps when they're fresh. I didn't list this as a specific pro, but I think it's a big advantage. Typically, your biceps get fatigued when you do a lot of back training involving pulling movements. And a lot of splits like push-pull legs, your biceps always comes after back training. But when we move biceps onto lower body days, we get to train them when they're fresh. Thus, you'll perform more productive volume, so more reps with higher weight, and this should lead to better gains. The biceps and side delts typically respond well to high frequency training. Finally, the upper lower split is very flexible. And this is one of the things I like most about the 4-day upper lower setup. Since your upper and lower body days don't really interfere with each other, you can shuffle your days around the week as needed. And I really like this setup because of this. Now, this program in particular, the full setup, isn't quite as flexible as just a standard hypertrophy type upper lower setup. As you saw, I specifically set up the days where day 1 and day 2 were ideally surrounded by rest days. But if you had to move things around, it wouldn't be that big of an issue. Okay, now let's talk about cons of this power hypertrophy upper lower setup. First of all, you have fatiguing power days. This is one of the issues that happens when you have a DUP setup. If you try to be very purist in your DUP, that is, you have all your low rep heavy work on a one day and all of your high rep lighter work come later in the week, your heavy days will end up being very fatiguing. This is because moving heavy weights puts a lot more stress on the body, especially when you're using heavy barbell compound movements like squats and deadlifts and rows, which produce a lot of axial fatigue. Axial fatigue comes into play when you use your lower back heavily and place compressive forces on your spine. And that's why you'll see that even on your power days, I've mixed in some lighter isolation work. So this may not be the most pure form of the full setup, but you'll see that I brought my own programming flavor into it. The other con of this setup is that triceps come after pushing movements. You'll see that I've tried to set things up where I moved biceps and side delts over onto leg days so you can train them when you're fresh, but triceps didn't get moved over. So your triceps still come after your big pushing movements. And that's just one of the inherent cons of the upper lower split. Now, we'll be sharing this full program as laid out in an Excel file in my Facebook group. So if you want to get the program, find the link to my Facebook group in the description below. Join the group and you can download the program for free. To learn more about setting up your own hypertrophy program and running it over time, check out my book on my website, askdrswole.com, and it'll really take your knowledge to the next level. I do think the modified upper lower split is one of the best setups for hypertrophy. In this video, I cover a similar 4-day upper lower setup. Definitely check this one out for a slightly different take. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and we'll see you next time.